In a small village of Yamaura, a man wakes up in the care of Aruru, an apprentice healer. With a strange mask stuck to his face and forgotten memories, he's confused and injured. Once better, Aruru's grandmother, the chief of the village, lends him her deceased son's clothes, making him unusually resemble him as he heads out. With Aruru's assistance, he explores, growing curious seeing others appear different from him and have animal features. Impulsively, he touches Aruru's tail, making her go beet red and pushing him embarrassed. The two meet the jolly Teoro and his wife, learning about the village and the recent earthquake it faced. While taking a break, Nwangi, Aruru's childhood friend and son of the king's younger brother, makes rounds gathering the hefty yearly tribute. He's grown to be obnoxious, often speaking ill of his birthplace Yamaura. Upon seeing Aruru, he forces her to go with him, trying to seduce her with luxuries. However, the man protects her, declaring her family and causing Nwangi to go crazy jealous. In his frenzy, he smashes one of the holy shrines in the forest, awakening the forest guardian Mutakapa. At Aruru's, the man has still not regained his memories and feels the strange heat sickening him again. Unknown to them, the Mutakapa enrages outside. Nwangi's recklessness has led the village into chaos. Even after repairing the shrine, the Mutakapa continues to attack, killing the innocent villagers. Refusing to sit idle, the man rushes up to the beast as Aruru tearfully follows. Luckily, they are saved as the beast retreats once it rains. Back at the chiefs, the village mourns. The man enters, revealing that the beast repulses being wet and volunteers to defeat it. The following day, together with Teoro and the villagers, he lures the Mutakapa into a trap filled with water. Impaling her to death, the group under his leadership and plan restores peace, returning victorious. Surprisingly, they find an erratic Aruru searching for her missing little sister, Aruru. To everyone's relief, they find her with a bulge on her stomach, claiming it's her baby. However, out falls a small Mutakapa kitten. Seeing that it's just a cub, the man reasons that small lives are pure, convincing the village to readily accept the little cat. With the village rejoicing and celebrating his bravery, the chief finally gives him a name, Hakuro, the name of Aruru's and Aruru's father. Hakuro blends well, helping villagers with his medicinal knowledge. One night, after the chief sheltered a group of battle-torn men, Aruru worriedly wakes Hakuro up, telling that grandma has gone missing. While searching, Hakuro is ambushed by a swordsman, Oboro, and his two minions. Just as he intends to kill him, grandma suddenly shows up. Scolding Oboro, she informs Hakuro that she had willingly left to help Oboro's sister, Yuzuha, in his secretive village. Much to Oboro's dislike, the chief brings Hakuro along and arrives at the village tending to Yuzuha, a poor little sickly blind girl. While grandma has a word with Oboro, Hakuro and Yuzuha get familiar, making friends. Later on, they return back to Aruru, and in the morning, the villagers strangely receive a load of replenishing cargo, secretly paid by Oboro and his village. However, it's not long before the chief is called again. Hakuro and her arrive to see Yuzuha fighting for life. Luckily, they manage to help using an expensive medicine. However, Yuzuha will relapse again and again, meaning the medicine evermore. To gain more funds, Oboro resorts to stealing from the Lord's mansion, coming across the samurai general of Inkala, Banawi, who injures him well. In the morning, while playing with the Mutakapa cub, Aruru and Hakuro find the collapsed Oboro. Once better with their care, Oboro's indebted to Hakuro and leaves. Nwangi returns, this time with his father, Lord Sasanta. Loudly, they accuse the village of sheltering the thief. As the hassle intensifies, one of the soldiers gravely injures the chief as the lord runs away scared of the tiny Mutakapa cub. Worried, the village gathers while Aruru and Aruru desperately try to save their grandma. However, she's aware that her time's up. Leaving her granddaughters with Hakuro, she sadly passes away. Hakuro soon delivers the news to Oboro, who grows enraged at himself for bringing such a calamity and leaves to confront the lord himself. Meanwhile, the mourning villagers, knowing well of Hokuru's character, ask him to succeed the late chief. Seeing the villagers, the sheltered soldiers, and Oboro's minions all stand in unison at the decision, Hokuru accepts. Under him, the men leave to join Oboro. Infuriated villagers break into the mansion, wreaking havoc as Oboro's chained below. Freeing himself, he joins Hokaru and the villagers. Together, they attack Sasante, who cowers like a dog, yelling for his son. However, Hokaru stabs him swiftly with the bladed fan the chief herself had bestowed him. Meanwhile, Nwangi flees enraged at Hokaru as the mansion falls to villagers. It seems like Banawi the samurai withheld backup. Victorious, the village is now at the mercy of the imperial court. They will surely come after them. Anticipating the imperial army's arrival anytime, the village prepares for the clash as Mukuru grows hungrier than usual. Even frustratedly fumbling with Aruru and leaving her almost bare-chested. Bad kitty. Even Oboro arrives with Yuzuha being indebted to Hakuro, He declares him his brother and joins with his people to prepare for the battle. As Aruru and Aruru make friends with Yuzuha, Oboro reveals that it was Yuzuha's wish to come here. Later on, Aruru and Hakuro find it doubtful Aruru hiding something. Pulling her aside, they find Mukuru munching on the stalks, now a massive Mutakapa. Soon, Hakaru and Oboro explore for villages to ally with, coming across the deadly scene of an innocent village torched to ash. Benawi and his men emerge from the smoke, immediately igniting a clash as Hakaru battles Benawi and Oboro with Benawi's right hand, Kuru. On the brink of defeat, a roar erupts as Mukuru and Aruru spring, defending Hikaru. Stunned seeing a Mutakapa, Benawi decides to retreat, but not before acknowledging Hikaru. Back at the Imperial Court, Benawi kneels before the king as he selfishly summons Nuwangi, putting him in charge instead. With Nuwangi as the new head general, he's being a literal pain in the ass, insulting Kuru, Benawi's right hand, into joining him, only to scatter off when faced with brute strength. Meanwhile, Hakuro, Oboro, and Teoro have been gathering allies, with more villages joining them at the news of Benawi torching one. As they sit chatting, Aruru brings in an awkward man claiming to be a frequent merchant at the mansion. Clumsily, he showcases his goods, even presenting a not-so-appropriate item to Aruru, before being escorted out by Hakuro. On his way, he suspiciously changes his demeanor, brandishing a dagger and mentioning the expensive medicine Oboro searches for before returning to his clumsy self. Out at the checkpoints, Benawi and Kuru are alerted. Within the shadows, the same merchant appears, passing information to Benawi. However, a survivor from the checkpoints stumbles at Hakuro's, making the villagers even more angered. Hakuro launches an attack and is surprised upon finding Benawi and Kuru there, although it seems as if Benawi would triumph. However, as more villagers join Hakuro, Benawi once again retreats defeated. At the Imperial Court, Benawi is shoved into dungeons for returning vanquished and questioning the king's reckless attacks on innocent villages as Nuwangi takes reins. Hakuro's forces strengthen, speedily taking over the country and now confident to break into the Imperial City. Unknown to them, Nuwangi has joined the stupid king's reckless antics of battering all villages, even innocent ones, so they don't stand against him. While Hakuro visits Yuzuha, Oboro rushes with the news. Headed by Nuwangi, the Imperial forces are about mass slaughter when Hakuro's men sprint onto them, making their forces cowardly retreat. However, the idiots sure drop their own commander behind. Fallen off his pedestal, Nuwangi's captured. The rat's finally found. Tied and ready to be beheaded, Nuwangi is still a pain. Lucky for him, Hakuro lets Aruru take the decision, and the sweet girl frees him. Now stronger than ever, Hakuro's forces confidently invade the Imperial City and wreak mayhem. Kuru rushes to the dungeons, freeing Benawi. Avoiding Hakuro, Benawi goes to the king, raising his blade to slay him as the lewd king begs, reasoning there are so many women to play with. Just as Hakuro enters, Benawi kills the king, placing the blade on his own neck before Hakuro swats it away, refusing for him to end. Together, the two walk out, announcing the fall of the emperor as the people erupt, rejoicing. With the dawn of a new empire, Hokoru is crowned king. Soon, the Onkamiya Mukai arrive, mediators from the temple of Witzel Namida, the people's god. As representatives of the temple, Princess Orutori and a temple teacher, Muto, arrive at the new kingdom. Meeting Hakuro and Benawi, they put forward the proposal of friendship and to act in the future as their mediators. The two were shown around by Aruru, whom the princess mistakes for Hakuro's queen. Meanwhile, Hakuro, while on a break, comes across another winged Onkamiya Mukai, later finding her asleep in his bed. Sensing the familiar aura, Orutori enters, catching her and informing Hakuro that she's her little sister, Camus, who had followed her. With his good heart, Hakuro allows her in, and soon Camus blends together with Aruru and Yuzuha, making friends and playing till exhausted. Seeing the kingdom happy and satisfied themselves, the Onkamiya Mukai soon leaves, certain of their new friendship with the kingdom of Tusker. Hakuro has done well. However, all kingdoms do not happily accept the new kingdom of Tusker, and soon a hostile message is sent from Niue, the emperor of Shikara-Pikcham. It demands Tusker to be ruled under them or to fall battling them. With the best of his character, Hakuro tries to settle, even scolding Oboro, who's always quick with his anger and protective of his brother Hakuro. But despite Hakuro receiving the envoys respectfully and peacefully, Niue attacks Tusker's checkpoints, alarming Hakuro. Now serving Hakuro, Benawi soon gathers forces, lining the fort and preparing for the attack. Niue's parties soon march onto them, with Kuru and Benawi fending them off. Meanwhile, together with his minions, Oboro secretly infiltrates the fallen castle. As Hakuro overlooks, waiting for his plan to go in action, he finds Aruru and Aruru to have followed him. Soon the castle goes ablaze with the concoction bursting and Niue's forces are trapped. Hakuro marches onto them, defeating the masses as Niue himself shows up. Face to face, Niue warns that he shall meet him again before retreating. One night, as the sea rages under the thunderous weather, a trafficking ship is caught in the waves. Abandoning the abducted, sailors flee, but not before a rabid girl, one of the seas, escapes as well, killing all the sailors ashore. By the time Hakuro's forces arrive, they find Bloodshed and the collapsed girl. Bringing her in, they lock her up, but the girl, Karula, breaks through, showing up before Hakuro. Her skills surely please Karu. However, Hakuro receives her warmly, asking Eruru to tend to her injuries. Being her clever self, Karula easily decodes Eruru's love for Hakuro, making her blood red. Upon Eruru's request, Karula's allowed out and adjusts quite well, avoiding Kuro's failed advances, brazenly drinking sake in broad daylight and making friends with Utawarerumono herself. For her skills, Hakuro decides to give her command, but not before Benoe assesses her. The soldiers gather as the two faces each other. Karula is not an easy opponent, but Benoe is still a hailed samurai and comes out victorious. However, she fought skillfully. Accepting command, Karula orders her weapon, an extremely massive sword that even breaks Kuro's sweat. But the goblin woman lifts it easily, leaving everyone dumbfounded. At last, Karula has found an abode out of shackles. With the threat of Niue attacking any minute, Hakuro seeks alliances with other countries, having Utawarerumono act as the mediator. While at an official gathering for sealing the alliance, an exasperated Teoro enters, calling for Hakuro and yelling that Yamaura is under attack. Sliding down the post he's leaning on, the jolly Teoro passes away, joining his wife and others of fallen Yamaura. Outside, Hakuro finds the enemy right upon his door and defeats them, realizing that it's not Niue's forces but Kuchiketchin's. The soldiers strangely seem almost tranced into madness. Hakuro himself is speechless. It seems that the situation is connected to Hakuro's past, which he does not remember. He must have committed something so grave as to turn the people of Kuchikecha into maniacs in hatred for him. With no luck in mediating and receiving a dying messenger back, Hakuro decides to attack. Together, Hakuro's forces march onwards. On their way, Mukuru senses something odd, and within a second, Hakuro is surrounded by the maniac forces. A strange girl, Tuka, and a man claiming to be Hakuro's brother-in-law aim to slay him. They call him Rakshane. The man, Lord Orikaken, claims Hakuro's identity is of an evil man, Rakshane, who had ruthlessly killed his people, wife, and even his children, dead set to not let him survive in the name of justice. On Tuka's advice, Orikaken decides to retreat as Hakuro himself returns back. Stunned, he's tired to the bone and collapses into sleep, having strange nightmares of being surrounded by those he must have killed. Meanwhile, Oboro scouts the area for the opponent forces when he, once again, comes across Tuka. However, she is alone and he combats solitary only to lose. Heading back, Tuka gives him the message that justice shall win. Gathering willpower, Hakuro once again marches for the enemy with his troops, going for an integral bridge used by them. At the mouth of it, they are met with Tuka, but manage to overpower her till she stands alone. Despite Hakuro asking her for clarity, she maintains that he's an evil man. Her unrelenting behavior leads Karula to combat her and slash the bridge off as Tuka collapses into the ditch with it. However, the situation is too intense for poor Hakuro, and he falls under tremendous trance-like stress, wondering who he really is. Eruru is worried, seeing the man who she has known to be selfless and brave, doubting his unknown past. As the news of Lord Orikaken and Tuka, and Evanko the warrior of justice, makes rounds, Hakuro's peoples grow uneasy, questioning if he's a good man. Hakuro's immensely demoralized, making Karula push Eruru to take advantage of the situation and console the sad man to love. However, without motive, Eruru hugs Hakuro, easing and assuring him that he'll always be supported and loved by her as Hakuro and never Rakshane. Feeling a bit better, Hakuro has some leisure time fooling around with Aruru, Mukuru, and Eruru, but doesn't last long. Hakuro's forces gather back and soon they head out to face the Kuchiketchins. Entering the battlefield, Hakuro's forces once again clash with the enemy. On motive, Hakuro withdraws, making Orikaken and Tuka follow him. Once alone, Orikaken prepares to kill him, but Hakuro smashes him to the ground, demanding to be told of his past. Sprawled, Orikaken taunts him for being evil, and Hakuro strangely starts feeling unstable, his body heating up. Upon seeing Hakuro heating up, Orikaken's demeanor changes as he gets terrified. Before Hakuro can react, an arrow flies through Orikaken's throat, killing him right there. It's Niue. Cackling, Niue calls to Hakuro, saying he purposefully agitated the Kuchiketchins against him before riding away. Although returns safely with his troops, Niue is preparing for much mischief. Niwa has launched attacks on the villages of Tusker left and right, trying their level best to incite. Oboro and Kuru are clearly irritated. However, Hakurou has caught on to Niwa's antics and chooses to strengthen border defense instead of invading Shikarapakim. Earnestly, Haruko asks Oboro and others to trust his plan as Niwa, on the other hand, greedily awaits Hakurou to transform into his true beast. He wants to acquire him. With effectively defending borders, Niwa decides to advance offensively. He gathers his elite troops and something more. Together with them, he marches into Tusker, burning and killing all villages and innocents they come into contact with. Ruthlessly and with no remorse, with the chaos growing extreme, decides on a very risky plan. To allow Niwa's forces into Tusker until Shikarapakim is drained of its cavalry and then invade the castle at Shikarapakim, taking Niwa's head. For now, as they battle, surprisingly, Tuka joins them. For being indebted to Hakurou for releasing her and paying respect to Orikaken's body. Together, Hakurou's forces once again drive the enemy to borders. With thousands of innocent lives fallen, Hakurou decides to leave the troops under Benawi and invade Shikarapakim to kill Niwa himself. On the border, a massive army of Shikarapakim awaits, making Benawi desperately counts on Hakurou. Meanwhile, Hakurou smashes into Niwa's castle, with Karula being her cocky self, handling the three elite warriors of Niwa, Tuka, and Eruru advance inside. Within the castle, Niwa unleashes his trump card onto them, armored men turned into soulless zombie-like maniacs. Cackling, Niwa reveals that they are elite soldiers from his invasions turned maniacs by triggering the beast in them. However, the beast he wishes to acquire the most is Hakurou. As Karula enters providing much-needed backup, Hakurou and Eruru go after Niwa. However, the madman Niwa sets his own country on fire, burning his own people to trap Hakurou from escaping. Seeing Niwa's madness, the beast starts erupting. Enraged, he goes after Niwa alone, as the mental king seems to almost drooling at the sight of his beast breaking through. Pushed to the brink, transforms into an unsightly being, shredding Niwa to threads of flesh. He stands stricken at the sight of his own work. The rain pours down as Hakurou steps out, victorious among the seas of bodies. Tusker has won again, but at what cost? What has it awakened? The war and its horrors melt away as the country begins restoring itself. Hakurou even sends for help to re-establish the government at Kucha. For his kind gesture, Tuka has become one of Hakurou's loyal comrades. Peace once again allows children to play carelessly. Of course, Aruru and Mukuru now join with the mischievous Karula to resume their plundering of food stocks. That's before they're caught red-handed, though. Among all the bliss, however, Hakurou is silently suffering. Nightmares of the fateful burning war keep returning to him as Niwa taunts him of the beast he is. One sleepless night, he comes across Camus, strangely drinking constantly, unable to quench her thirst. He worries, but Oritora hurriedly takes her away. Unaware that he's being spectated by a strange man. Unable to face his misery of the events at Shikarapakim and decide for the survivors of it, Hakurou returns to the ruins. As he stands berating himself, Eruru once again makes him hopeful for the coming tomorrow. Eased, he lets the survivors return and rebuild their ruined homeland. Once again wandering at night, he again finds Camus playing around with something unworldly when a strange man reveals himself. Introducing himself as Genjimaru, he takes Hakurou to meet his ruler and outsteps a veiled person, Kuya, the ruler of Kunakaman. Meeting Hakurou, Kuya immediately reveals that he's had an investigation done on him and knows a lot. However, he's curious as to how led such small people to huge rebellions and take big empires, wondering if he has powers due to being a Kunaite. Seeing Hakurou confused, he explains that Kunaites are under the divinity of Godam the Tekkaean, the true god, who was overthrown by Witzel Namida, the god of misfortune. With Hakurou pondering over the news, his land is quite blissful. One day, Hakurou is presented with a rare creature, Mikyum, a creature thought to be able to cure all illnesses. Immediately, Oboro wills to buy it for Yuzuha. Seeing Oboro so serious as to get it for Yuzuha, Hakurou buys it for him, and immediately Aruru names it Gachatera. Later, Oboro drunkenly thanks Hakurou before his minions take him away. Hokaru returns to meet Kuya. Talking again, he embarrassingly listens to more information about him, particularly about having lots of women. He isn't even aware of it himself. That's when Kuya removes the veil, showing herself. She's a beautiful girl, not a boy. Hakurou and his friends sit feasting, and they are delivered a message regarding the rebellion moves of slaves in Natuk, led by Deliharai. It seems to have caught Karula's eye. That night, she enters Hakurou's quarters, all dressed, requesting him to help the rebels of Natuk. Upon accepting, she stands up to Hakurou's astonishment, removing her attire to pay him back. That is not what I thought repayment is. Worse, they are caught by Eruru herself. Surely, Hakuro gets a serious silent treatment in the following days. In addition to the chaos, Hakuro is abducted by Kurula and Orutori, and the whole platoon, including Aruru, Eruru, Kamis, Yuzuha, Tuka, Mukuru, and Gakutera, decides to go on the journey. On their way, Eruru and Hakuro luckily clear misconceptions just before they are surrounded by Delihore and his troops. It turns out he's Kurula's brother, unaware that she's his sister. At night, as she reconciles with Katuma, fires waft from Delihore's settlement. Immediately, Hakuro's friends assail Natuk's attack, fending them off, but Delihore is not pleased with the assistance. He gets a lesson from Kurula, but the boy's quite stone-headed. However, dismissing Delihore, Katuma bows, asking Kurula and her friends to help in the rebellion. Now with added help, Delihore advances on Natuk's troops, coming out victorious. Although he's a bit irritated by the experience and wise fighters Hokaru and his friends are, he soon grows up to them. From her past, Kurula remembers an underground route via waterway into the castle. Hence, they decide to break in from the underways while Delihore's troops fight outside. As Hakuro and the rest get into the castle, shocked, they are met with the sight of thousands of Larumanion new blossoms grown from human bodies as a madman, the ruler of Natuk, Sankasu, sits on his throne surrounded by them. Upon seeing Kurula, he calls her real name Karolostre, leaving Delihore ajar from realization. Declaring his love for her, he reveals that he hailed chaos only for her to return. Charging, Kurula and Delihore kill Sankasu, but before Delihore can get a chance to reunite with his sister, he's hurried off to help the rest of the men. Days later, Delihore visits Tusker to thank the Emperor for his aid and is taken aback when Hakuro walks in. Paying his respects, he leaves as Kurula watches her brother go well and strong. A clumsy little girl, Sakuya, breaks into Hakuro's place, stumbling into Hakuro's quarters accidentally. Luckily, he sends the soldiers off as Sakuya introduces herself as Kuya's representative. He follows her to Kuya, but doesn't go unnoticed. Sneaking behind a tree, she watches him and accidentally shrieks when Kuya suggests Hakuro take a wife from her country, getting herself caught. However, Kuya implies Sakuya as a perfect candidate, making her redder than blood and reasoning that she's great in bed. That surely made everyone uncomfortable because the girl clearly doesn't know the meaning. However, there's much going on in Kuya's land and they're engaged in a possible war. One evening, Hakuro astonishingly finds a collapsed Aruru bitten by Kamis. Upon finding her, he sees Kamis terrified and confused by her own actions. However, Aruru, being a good friend, never forsakes her. Meanwhile, the situation at Kunakamun is intensifying, since the Kunakamun holds the frightening massive bots capable of swiping the troops clean in one go. Soon, Hakuro falls in a tough spot when Elemu reaches him to mediate between them and Kunakamun, begging that they had no intention of attacking it. Despite Orutori mediating from Hakuro's side, Kunakamun rejects it, highlighting their blasphemous god Witzel Namida, and continues to attack Elemu. It turns out that it's not Kuya, who is giving out the ruthless order to invade and kill in the land of Elemu, but a troublesome fellow Huenqua. Disturbed a bit, Kuya reaches out to Hakuro and, being a good friend, he earnestly tells her to seek much-needed advice from those she loves like Sakuya and Genjimaru, similar to how he seeks his from Eruru. Although Kuya returns determined, more states start attacking Kunakamun under immense stress. She finally falls to Huenqua's manipulation, ordering bloodshed across lands. The Kunakamun bots start trampling through empires after empires, even taking down the empire of Onkamiya Mukai, where they are helped by a strange man, D. Soon, Kunakamun marches for Hakuro's door as well. Concerned for his people, Hakuro empties the capital as Oboro, Banawi, Kuros, Kurula, and others stand waiting until the formidable bots show up in Tusker. Kunakamun bots arrive before Hakuro's force, wreaking havoc. With the conditions at the front plummeting, Hakuro rides back to handle the situation himself. He appears before the Huenqua, making him grow maniacally delighted at the sight. Attempting to pull him away, Hakuro retreats, but Huenqua catches up, attacking him. Before Huenqua can harm him, Aruru and Mukuru appear, all of a sudden. Events take a dire turn when Huenqua brutally hits Aruru to death. The sight of her is enough to make Hakuro tremble. Shaking in devastation, he holds her close as Huenqua heartlessly stomps on him. All spectated by a horrified Aruru who was searching for Aruru. Unaware, Huenqua has triggered something far more formidable than the bots. Black miasma erupts from under him as his bot starts crumpling like bread, and out emerges a massive creature. He pins Huenqua's bot, bursting his head like a bubble as Huenqua falls out, wailing for his mommy. With the situation ending in such a twist of events, Hakuro wakes up in his quarters having another one of his nightmares. Upon Aruru entering, he worriedly asks for Aruru only to find her playing outside. The strange man D has seen the events unfold with Kuya lost and pressing the war forward. He seems to be planning for more chaos to come, and Genjimaru is aware of it. Meanwhile, Hakuro is confused at what had happened to him and how Aruru is alive. He suffers visions of being in a lab-like place, seeing a test subject girl resembling Aruru but named Mikoto and a man with a similar mask to his, named Hakuro as well. It's not long before Genjimaru stumbles, asking for help and allying with Hakuro. With him by his side, Hakuro decides to rescue the High Priest, Oritori, and Kamisa's father first. One night, as Aruru tends to Hakuro's wounds, he reminds her of the first time she cared for him, asking her to always be by his side. This makes her go quiet. She holds an unspoken secret and might have formed a pact with the creature Hakuro transformed into to save Aruru's life. However, Oritori, being a priestess, knows all and honestly tells her to live as herself. Soon, the men and Genjimaru return with the High Priest. Now as a High Priest, Oritori mediates and gathers the children of Witzel Namida to help against the bloodshed of Kunkamun. This time, Hakuro marches with his troops towards Kunkamun, defeating the bots with Genjimaru's guidance. While fighting, Hakuro and Genjimaru are strangely teleported inside the castle and before Kuya. She is still in her antics, however. After a clash of brute force, Hakuro manages to calm her. With Kuya fallen, the mysterious man D finally shows up together with his two minions, including the rabid Huenkwa. Immediately, Oritori recognizes him, a fellow philosopher Onkamiya Mukai who had gone missing. D confronts Genjimaru for defying his pact, who has realized that Aruru holds a similar pact as well, making everyone else confused as to what they're talking about. As the situation intensifies, Oritori teleports everyone to safety and Hakuro's beast once again starts pulsating. He transforms into his massive self, making poor Huenkwa piss his pants, bringing him down for good. As Hakuro fights, Camus appears from behind a post asking D to stop, but the man summons a girl named Mutsumi, his daughter, and Camus transforms into a different girl, attacking Hakuro head-on. Seeing the situation, Genjimaru sacrifices himself, causing D to withdraw and leave the land in flames as Hakuro, back to his normal self, carries an injured Kuya out. Finally, Oritori explains the confusion to Hakuro, clearing that a spirit of the Onkamiya Mukai ancestor often reincarnates in their bodies, this time Camus's, so that it can be with the god Witzel Namida. D himself happens to be Witzel Namida, and the beast within Hakuro is another manifestation of Witzel Namida. Sensing he'll be gone in this war, Hakuro asks Oboro to succeed him if anything is to happen and decides to set out alone to bring Camus back. But how can his troop of friends let their beloved leader go alone? Together, they march to Onkamiya Mukai under Oritori's guidance. Once they enter, they are immediately ambushed by unworldly attacking blobs as Camus, or should I say Mutsumi, leads them. Hakuro follows her, coming to a dead end, and is hit with another vision of the labs. There, the doctor, referring to Hakuro as Iceman, allows him to escape with Mikoto. As the vision fades, Mutsumi attacks again. However, Aruru calls out to Camus, making Mutsumi collapse in a struggle. Before they can pry Camus back, D appears. Hakuro turns into the beastly creature, nullifying the pact with Aruru to save Aruru and setting them free as D himself transforms. The two zooms into the sky, ready to clash, engaging in the final clash between the two versions of Witzel Namida. D and Hakuro immerse in a frightening clash, hitting each other with full force. While clashing, D relentlessly tries to justify his acts of inciting wars as to be done in favor of his children, the followers of Witzel Namida. However, Hakuro denies accepting brazen bloodshed. Soon he realizes that the two of them are splits of the same body of the god Witzel Namida and decides to rejoin himself with D and ultimately end him. As D charges, staving his armed hand into Hakuro's torso, Hakuro cleverly takes the hit, beginning to co-join with D's body, swooshing his bladed arm at his neck and beheading the giant beast of D. Engulfed in a tornado of miasma, Hakuro stands solitary, joined with Witzel Namida's other half. His beastly self stands before Aruru and Ahuru as the poor girls cry for him. Once Camus is back, he asks Oritori to seal him away, wishing to put an end to the mayhem. Oritori chants as the Hakuro's friends charge, slashing, attacking, and assailing Hakuro's beast as it flashes and is sent to the beyond. Before Hakuro's soul goes along, he says his last words to each and every one of his friends, especially Aruru, who at last confesses her love for him before he walks away. Running towards him, she engulfs Hakuro, giving him their first and last goodbye kiss. With Hakuro gone, Oboro takes the throne of Tusker, and the country returns to its peace.